That's me.
Love you. Oh, it's awesome. Oh yeah, totally. I am not. Although this afternoon is calling for that. Hopefully I'll get my butt out onto the pavement.
Awesome.
The idea.
So today we're talking about public speaking because you're fresh off this awesome program that I want to hear about.
Yeah. And it's funny, some of the people that I told about it, I kept it to myself because I wanted to go into it without feeling any pressure or just like lean into it. It was an educational event. It wasn't where I was speaking. I wasn't going there to talk on the stage. I was going there to learn from basically experienced actors helping non-actors learn the techniques of rehearsal and content mapping and, like basically content mapping in terms of what word choice, what like the editing process, where emphasis and pause and gravity is brought into it, or humor. Oh my God, this one guy, one of the teachers, his name is Ron Tite. He was unbelievable. So hilarious, but also such a great teacher. I learned a ton and I got a lot of inspiration about what would be my style, but mostly I've always been someone who has said, oh, I do better winging it. Put me in a Q&A scenario and I kill. As in, I'm not afraid of a conversation. I look forward to it. I super enjoy these styles of conversation. It doesn't matter to me if I'm on a stage for that or not. So I enjoy being just in conversation about my stuff, what I care about, what I work on, what I work with others on, etc. So the coolest thing about this event is that it informed the skill set and it helped me understand the value in this effort, as in to learn how to prepare content and learn how to basically learn a crafted keynote. It's a lot like stand-up comedy. Yeah. And that's the thing. I took a stand-up comedy class and I loved it, even though I was terrible at the actual delivery, because I'm really practiced in not being prepared, right? I'm really I'm not an actor. Like, yeah, I make the funny movies and I'm an actor in that sense. Like I enjoy making those films, but I wouldn't call myself an actor. When I get on stage as a keynote, I'm imagining I'm myself. So I bring into it a lot of like, so I'm getting up there, leaning into this prepared content style, and that's not something I'm very practiced at. So I'm like, oh, great. I can actually lean into this, practice this, put in some effort, and actually get good at this style of presenting. So that was really empowering to me because I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm not afraid of working hard to learn something new. I love that, in fact.
Oh, yes.
So it released me from, I just wing it. I'm better at just, and I'm like, you know what? Worst case, I learn how to prepare content and deliver it. And I don't like doing that. I can always not do it.
Let me ask you. So this program, do they want you to be like full on scripted every word, or is it like kind of more like a mind mapping, like you prepare stories and then you kind of tell the story in the flow?
Yeah, well, I guess it varies for people. Like it depends on how skilled you are at telling your stories or how skilled you are at saying your points or speaking to your points. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, the event that I went to is called HPS Live. It's called Heroic Public Speaking Live. And it was with Michael Port and Amy Port. And I want to say this publicly because the podcast that I always talk about that I love, The Art of Charm, freaking heck, like it was $1,000 ticket. They had some extra free tickets. They said to the audience, hey, Jordan, the host, said, write in if you have a compelling reason. Tell me why you think you are deserving of this ticket. I was totally nervous. I didn't want to write in. I didn't want to ask for anything. I always want to be giving. There was a part of me that's like, oh, I don't even want to ask for this, but they said write in. So like I had that moment of worrying about it. So I wrote in, and I'm not joking, within 10 minutes, Jordan had responded and given me the ticket. I was so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to have this experience because of this amazing show. I just can't.
You're a fan. Do you like the
it.
show, Melanie?
I cannot recommend it enough. The value they provide for the world is so high. And
Awesome.
so anyway, that's what the event was, and I really recommend it. But yeah, the answer to your question, do they say script it entirely? Sometimes yes. And do they say sometimes do outlines? Sometimes yes. I think the initial skill set is to try really scripting it and seeing how you do with that.
Like if you can get the authenticity while still sticking to script, because that's the trick, right?
Well, and that's the idea, is that if you have a script, like I'm long-winded. If I don't have a script, if I don't try to hone down my language, I could just go off into Never Never Land excitedly describing things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that's
it's a skill set.
Necessarily what a keynote is.
Yeah, no, it's a skill set to be able to be concise.
Totally.
Get to your point in as few words as possible, as compellingly as possible.
Yes.
And highlight the point of the story, like tell the key points of the story, and then like why it's relevant, like why I'm telling you a story about being a parent when we're talking about being an entrepreneur, like why is this even relevant? That's so cool, because I haven't sent it to you yet, but I was telling you while you were doing your program, I found this guy, Eric Admides. I'm not even sure if I'm saying it right, but he actually runs a nutritional program that I'm doing that I love. Cool. But he's also an amazing public speaker and does public speaking training because he's been asked to, because he was someone who was not good at public speaking.
Right.
So he studied it, came up with strategies and systems to get good at it, became really, really, really good at it. And that's one of the things that I love. And I know you are the same way. It's like, we have this limiting belief that, oh, you know what, I'm not good at that, so that's never going to really be my thing.
Yeah.
But actually the people that end up getting the best, being the best at things, are often the people that weren't good at first. They put in the work.
Totally.
They put in the work. They studied, well, like, okay, who are the best public speakers and why are they so good? Like, what are the elements that make them so compelling and so powerful as a public speaker? And then I'm going to practice those. Mm-hmm. Like you said, whether it's the inflection, whether it's the timing, there's so many elements that go into being a compelling public speaker.
Yeah.
And so this was just like an hour talk, right? This is not like a program anywhere near the depth at which that you did. But what was really cool about what I got out of that was he was talking about getting really, really strong in your storytelling, which you and I talk about a lot, how important it is to be a strong storyteller, which, to your point, what you're speaking to is like, well, maybe you're just not yet. And so where do you start if you're not yet a strong storyteller, which I think speaks to what you got out of that. For me, am I an awesome storyteller? No. Could I be better? Yes. And yes. And for me, what I got out of that was like, okay, get better at telling certain stories. Right. And with certain points to those stories.
Exactly.
Practice telling those stories.
Totally.
Get better at telling the stories to the point where you're just kind of authentically telling the story. So don't script out word for word, because you'll lose the authenticity. You'll lose the sparkle of the story.
For some, that's the way to do it. For others,
you're not there yet. Yeah.
For others, it might be better to script it.
Yeah.
So that you can hone, make it concise.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then because the story is no less inauthentic. That's the thing about performing. Stand-up comedian, for example, theoretically you are a caricature of who you actually are. That's the idea behind stand-up comedy. And they sound like they're just making shit up on the fly, but that's because they've rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed.
Right.
And so that's the thing, is that in any skill set, we can, and this, I've talked about this in skydiving forever, is that we can get really good at doing things badly. We can get, you can totally become a competent, proficient skydiver and get into various formations with the skills that you have, but you will never be elite level skills unless you break down those bad habits that you didn't care. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like intentional, like, oh, you suck. It's like,
No, it's
you know
just,
what I mean?
you're doing your best. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Well,
And you're
that's,
stuck doing things a certain
yeah. And
way.
so I never learned the skill. So I like the idea of practicing full scripted shit,
Mm-hmm.
because if my stand-up comedy informed me of anything, it told me, oh, I'm not good at prepared content.
Mm-hmm.
No, the actual thing that it informed me is I don't have those skills yet. And so
Mm-hmm.
now I want to see, because again, the stories are real. The
Yeah. What I'm
authenticity,
hearing, I guess, my takeaway from it
yeah,
is like practice enough so then you can do it without thinking.
totally. That's
Because if you're like
exactly the goal.
thinking, right? Like if you're thinking while
100%.
you're telling it, you're not like authentically being that, the
100%.
story. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that like scripted, if you need to practice it scripted so you can get it down without thinking about it. And then you can be in the moment.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to internalize it into your body. And that's what they said in the HPS Live, which I completely agree with, is that the rehearsal process, and that's sort of what they taught us, the rehearsal process is what helps us get something that won't be necessarily naturally how we might tell a story, but when we rehearse it, we internalize it, because the messages are us.
Yeah.
The messages that I'm going to talk about in a more concise way are totally authentic. To me.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to tell them in a more concise way, and I'm willing to practice that.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
practice, you and I are both on the same page about all that. Like, and again, I was very similar to you because I'm kind of a natural speaker. Like I never really kind of had fear around being a public speaker. I remember when I was in 6th grade, I decided I was going to run for second vice president, even though like I knew no one, and got up in front with, in front of the whole school, 6th to 8th grade, and like gave a completely unprepared, off the cuff speech as to why I should be second vice president. Of course, I lost to Barry Baker. He had a sister in 8th grade, and he was awesome. I love Barry. He's awesome. But it's a funny story. But, from the time that I was young, I had no problem getting up in front of, however many 100 or 1,000 people with nothing prepared and just kind of speaking off the cuff authentically about why I thought I was awesome, right? Or why I thought I could. Little Pam was not shy or lacking confidence. And the practicing process can take wherever you are, and raise it up. Like no matter where we are in any kind of skill set, there's always infinite room for improvement.
Totally.
Infinite.
And why not experiment and try it? Because you can always decide not to do it that way.
Yeah.
I can lean into the skill set of prepared content. I can get awesome at it, can kill it. And I can still decide, you know what? It just still isn't as awesome as when I'm just blabbering on.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose to go back to blabbering style.
Yeah. And I think different presentations, I feel like call for different styles too.
Totally.
Like I think both of us have this goal for doing a TED Talk, and I wrote the TED Talk and it's completely scripted.
Cool.
I haven't been practicing it as much as I want to, as I've been really busy, but it's completely scripted, and I need to practice it to be able to deliver it completely in the flow without thinking about what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Because if I'm in my mind reading it, even if I have it memorized, but I'm reading it from my mind, that won't fly. It has to be kind of in the flow. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
It just takes a lot of work. And that's the thing, is that there's this period of, I'm this good at something, or this is where I feel confident and strong in terms of this skill set. And then, I'm going to try something new, which is not my usual skill set. So the production of it, the like experience
quality
of it declines. And we're like, that's worse. It's that whole dip before we get an ascending sine wave of our skill set, of our ability to execute, So it's like, we have to recognize that this is where we're starting. This is what it's going to feel like at first. And this is where we're going to end up, if we press through and persevere through that dip.
Yeah. It's like last week when I cleaned Jesse's closet with him. Halfway through, he's like, "Mom, this is so much worse." I'm like, yeah,
exactly.
In the middle of cleaning the closet, buddy, everything's out. So right now it is worse, but in another half an hour, it'll be better.
Exactly.
But it's consistent across every area of practice, that you have to be willing to face that kind of hit, that decline in performance or decline in perceived state in order to get the improvement.
Totally.
How do you talk through the fear? Because obviously a lot of people have fear around public speaking. So what are your tricks around that?
Talks about, well, I think it's first identifying what it is for you specifically. Like, it's funny, like what I find myself experiencing when I go to like a networking event or whatever is I always feel like I sound like when I talk about skydiving, because skydiving is so awesome. It's so cool. Like I look at skydiving and go, and still after 22 years, I look at it and I go, that is so fucking cool. Like I still like can't even believe that we climb out of an aircraft in flight and hold on to it on the outside. Like I'm on the outside of an aircraft in flight. Like that's just so cool to me. Right. So I have that perception of skydiving, and it's totally authentic and earnest. Like it's a pure loving perception of this thing that we've done and I've done in my life. And so that tends to make me worry that people are going to think I'm saying I'm super cool, because if I think about like leadership in skydiving and all this stuff, and just how I feel when I relate to other people is that like, I feel like, and of course we are all human, so like the biggest things, the things that I want to talk about more are like the times when I screwed up, and the times when I'm not going to tell the stories now, but like those humanizing stories that take someone that maybe is up on a pedestal and brings them down to a human level. I feel like there's so much leadership in that. Like, so I always find myself afraid of what other people are thinking of me, like thinking that I'm not like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Like, totally makes sense.
'Cause I'm over here going, oh God, I'm just like anyone else, like, trying to do it good and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always get kind of the butterflies in my stomach, and my heart will start to beat faster.
Definitely.
Like I consistently have that kind of physical kind of pregame response, like right beforehand. And for me, one of the things that I've kind of learned is that, nervousness and excitement are the exact same feeling, the exact same kind of physical feeling. And the only difference is kind of the story in our head.
Correct.
And so for me, like visualizing things going really well ahead of time, visualizing it being over and it being like really well received, really kind of cementing kind of my positive expectation, my positive visualization as I go into it, because then I'm like, no, I'm excited, and it's completely appropriate to be excited about this, because this is a great opportunity and it's going to go great. It's going to be a great learning experience for me. I know I'm going to add value. I know it's not going to be perfect, because nothing ever is. But that's what I've kind of learned to do with that uncomfortable and disruptive, if I allow it to be negative at all, feeling.
Yeah. And a couple of things that I do like to add to, like, so that's my experience, and the physiological response, totally normal, totally happens, totally something, again, back in skydiving. What I start to do is I first manage the physiological response. So I take in deep breaths and I focus on my physical body. I like breathe out the tension that I literally feel in my chest and my muscles and stuff like that. Then I also bring my mind back to being of service. So all I care about, because it's like when we get self-focused, like, oh, even if it's me, just, oh, they're going to think I'm some jerk, whatever. Like that's me kind of focused on me, but like externally focused, like wanting to control other people. Whereas when I make choices from my core values of I'm going to attempt and really earnestly try to be of service. When I come from that place, no matter how I do, it's theoretically always going to be okay in the end. Whether people receive me or not, I can at least rest easy that that's where I'm coming from. And most of the time when we do that, when we come from that, I'm aiming to be of service energy, it is actually received better, or whatever the word is.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
I think all that stuff, I think it all plays in, obviously, to how well we perform at the end of the day. And so the more skillful we get handling those things, will help us, with our performance. And then of course, the more we practice with, the performance strategies and skills, then that will improve too. So there's always room for growth and progress in all of this. And that's, I think, the most important thing to remember, that everyone is capable of doing this. You may never be the best, public speaker, but if you have, and we all have, ideas that are of service to others, learning to public speak and getting comfortable with it and doing it even if you're not comfortable with it, that's what enables all of us to be of service on a higher level.
Yeah.
Because if we won't do it, we're limiting our reach.
Yeah, it's for sure. I mean, and it's funny, like another thing that works for me in mindset is the knowledge that it takes courage to be up there. I see anybody on stage or anybody being willing to public speak or do a Facebook Live or whatever, and I'm like, that takes guts. That's respectable. No matter how it goes or what they sound like, that is respectable, because that takes courage. And I value courage. I respect that. So from my value set, I look at that. So my people, my audience will respect that I'm up there trying it all. So that's pretty cool. It's funny. I was talking with a client this morning, and one of the things we touched on in our conversation was that choosing from our values doesn't always feel good. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a misconception that we always want to feel good or we always want to feel comfortable, when really it's like, obviously in growth we're feeling uncomfortable, but like, it's really, I think, critical to understand that sometimes our values have us go in a direction and make choices that will not fit for some people. And so it will not feel super comfortable to put that out there, to establish a boundary, to stand for a certain value or a certain thing. And we will be met with resistance, and that doesn't always feel good. Yeah. Doesn't mean it's not deeply most fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, one of our kind of instincts for survival, and we talk about this all the time, is the connectedness and belonging. And that is a really, really, really strong instinct and impulse that we have. And so when our values require us to sacrifice that in any way, it is going to be uncomfortable as hell.
Totally.
And you have to override that and say, thank you. I get it. I understand why you're freaking out right now, ego.
Yeah.
But this is important and this is right. So you can lay back down. Now, and I didn't forget if we talked about like my whole like ego dog like analogy. I think we did maybe offline.
Tell it.
Because we've talked about ego in the past and how I have in my work, like I had this whole aversion to my ego, because when I was in my ego, I felt more disconnected from kind of my higher purpose and my higher wisdom and everything. And so I was like, I was very uncomfortable being in my ego, but of course we need to be in our ego to achieve anything moment to moment as the human being, because that's what does work on this plane. So there was this great teacher who encouraged everyone to think about your ego as a pet dog. Yeah. And everybody has a different kind. And at first I thought mine was a golden retriever, and I was like, no, actually it's not. My pet ego, my dog, that's my trusty ego, is like a sheepdog, like one of those really fast, really smart and capable, like follows instructions really well, like can do really complex things with sheep, and like shepherds. I don't know. I don't even know why. I should probably research. I know what it looks like. It's like the white and black kind of dog. Her name is Streak. She's very fast and she's awesome. But now, because I've made friends with, like, I recognize this relationship where my ego loves me. Like my ego would do anything for me. My ego is like fiercely trying to protect me the best that it knows how, but it's just a dog. Like it's just, it doesn't have the bigger insights that I have access to. And so there's going to be times when it's like, ruff, 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 like danger, 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 threat, threat. And I can look at what's going on and be like, thanks, actually, I'm fine. Like, that's actually not really a threat. Like,
Right.
you know, whenever there's an issue where we have to sacrifice connectedness or belonging,
Yeah.
our ego, our trusty pet dog that's protecting us, is going to freak out because it's like,
Yeah.
that isn't good. That isn't good. And then we have to look at the situation and say, actually, no, this time, this is exactly what I need to do because this is in alignment with my deeper values.
Yeah.
And right now I need to sacrifice connectedness and belonging with these people or in this situation because it's not in alignment with my deeper values, and I'm okay. So you can override by being in the higher part of your brain, not your kind of lower trusty ego part of your brain.
So true. And that's very scary, the idea of being rejected, of losing connectedness and belonging. And that's what I think a lot of people really are confronted with when they get on a stage to speak at any level.
Yeah.
You know? And I say a stage, it could be a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
It's like
I've had that happen, even a one-on-one conversation where suddenly I get like a fear of being judged.
Totally.
And it like completely makes me lose my flow, my train of thought. And then I'm like, and it's real because we feel it when people are judging us or when people are thinking critically, or we feel that energy on some level. Or we can make it up, right? Like sometimes it's real. Sometimes we imagine it, and our body, our ego can't tell the difference between something imaginary or real. So
totally,
it could be imagination.
Yeah. I love the distinction though, that public speaking is a version of connection and being seen. Some people, like if they have social fear, for example, going out and meeting someone new feels like they are on a stage in front of 1,000 fucking people. Yeah. You know, so it's the same thing. So it's this cool idea that there are things that we can learn to help us diffuse down our fear, that we can get better at as skills. I harp on the word skills, but the reason I harp on the word skills so much is that it takes away this BS notion that I'm just like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not good at I'm not good at this. I can't do this. I can't. You may never be the best at something, but if you practice, if you learn new strategies, you tell yourself a positive story about it. Because even if you're like learning new strategies, but you keep telling yourself in your head, I can't do this. I can't public speak. I can't. If you believe that in your head, if you're saying that in your head, it will be true. So you literally need to change the story in your head and tell yourself, I can get better at this. I have to practice and it's worth it. I'm worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that an even more subtle distinction to that is that not only I can't do this, but the absolute, like the personally identified, I'm not that way. I am identified as not possessing like this. So because this is me, it is unchangeable. So you know what I mean? Like,
those limiting beliefs kill you. Like it literally cuts off growth.
Limiting. Yeah. So anyway, I just stand so strongly for that. And that's why I love skills, is that it totally, in just by definition, implies it's something anyone can learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's just so freeing and so exciting because, at least for me, I am not afraid of working towards something. I have failed plenty of times and fucked up plenty of times such that I'm less afraid of that. You know what I mean? So I'm not as blocked by my fear of failure as I am more like working through this fear of being really seen by a lot of people.
I love it. I love you, Mel.
I love you.
Awesome as always.
Bringing intensity to today's call.
Yes.
Well, any final thoughts, my darling?
No, I think that was a perfect wrap up. I think
awesome.
Perfect. You are awesome. I love you and appreciate you.
Oh.
I can't do it. I can't.
I know.